Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to Escape to Nature, where I'm coming to you from the Okukuyu Waterhole in the Etosha National Park of Namibia. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and yes, indeed, once again, I'm on Waterhole Watch. I've got control of this damn cam at the Okukuyu Waterhole. I'm also controlling the Juma Waterhole camera. So I'm on the Waterhole Watch as mentioned, but I'm not the only one that's going to be on the show. We also do have Andrew, who's down in the Amakhala Game Reserve in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa, as well as Lauren, who's out on the Madikwe Game Reserve in the Northwest province, also in South Africa. So welcome aboard. As always, this is a live and interactive experience, so we'd love for you to jump on board with us and register on the Wild Earth website or jump onto the app and you can send us through all your questions and your comments. And don't forget to subscribe on the YouTube channel as well. What is the bush going to hold in store for us today? Well, you'll have to stay tuned and find out. We'll be chatting about all sorts of different ecological concepts or whatever else it might be. Now, a little bit quiet here at the Okukuyu Waterhole, but this is to be expected. It comes in fits and starts. As it warms up through the day, we generally have a lot more animals that do come down. But initially, and at this time of the morning, we generally do have a lot of birds coming down to drink. And they really do come in their numbers, from the sandgrass to the Cape turtle doves or ring-necked doves, and lots of little finches and all sorts. And they generally do come down in massive swarms. Sometimes a little bit difficult to see, especially when there's animals around. It does split them up a little bit, but it's really safety in numbers. The biggest predators that they have are the likes of Lanner falcons and Gabar goshawks, as well as jackals that do trot around and take them out. But if there's lots of them, they then have a lot less risk for them because there's a lot more of them. So the chances of them getting taken out is much less, especially for the birds of prey. Because a bird of prey, it's very easy to take down a singular bird that comes down to drink. But as soon as there's a big flock, there's a real risk of injury if they go into that flock without having singled out an individual. So they prefer to take on animals that come in ones and twos, not when they come in those big flocks of 30 plus. So it's just very interesting. And listen out for the sand grass. You can hear them with that very bubbly beep, 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 beep. It's generally the sound of this waterhole at this time of the morning. And with that being said, what are the sounds that remind you of different places? In the early mornings, it's definitely the Namakwa sandgrass that really reminds me of the Okukuyu waterhole. And then later on in the day, obviously hearing a lot more of the zebra with their very particular call. And at this time of year as well, lots of springbok calling and that very croaky frog-like call. So those are the sounds that always remind me of Okukuyu. And if you go down into the south of Namibia, it's the sounds of the little barking gecko that you don't often get to see, but it sounds like smacking two marbles together. In the early mornings, late afternoon, and as you go into darkness. So I've spent many, many days and nights camping out in the desert, and that really reminds me, especially of the south down near to Sossusvlei, as well as in Damaraland, and the sounds of the Rupel's Koran as well, where they've got a call like quack, 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 quack. What sounds remind you of different places? But as we say that, and as you think of the sounds that remind you of different wilderness areas, it looks like it's a lovely day here in Okukuyu. There's a little bit of wind about, but tell you what, let's go off and see what the weather's going to be like across the different locations. So just a few seconds ago, the waterhole was pretty empty, and look how things change. In an instant, just about, the animals now flocking in to come for a drink. Have a look at that. A dazzle of stripes. Wonderful. All in a line. Absolutely stunning. These being the Burchell's or Plains zebra, more generalist species of zebra, whereas the Hartmann's mountain zebra, a little bit more specialized, desert adapted animal. Ruben, yes, thanks for jumping on board with us. Absolutely. It is just very striking, the contrasts with the blacks and whites. And there is a little bit of ripple on the water, so we're not seeing perfect mirror-like images, but it's still just fascinating. The tapestry of stripes. Wonderful. And as more come, you see they start pushing further and further into the water. And we're going to get more and more animals here at the Okukuyo waterhole. As we head into the dry season, there will be higher concentrations every day as we go forward now. Lots of, well, there's a mixture of harems here. This isn't all just one herd. They can move together as a group, but there will be the separations of the stallions with their different harems, normally between 5 and 15 or so females, that each male will be able to keep within his group. But when they come down to the water, as with the birds, it does make sense for the animals to all clump up like this. Chances are less. There's more eyes and ears, and so the safety in numbers for predators, particularly lions, really decreases the chance of getting eaten. Truly survival of the fittest, and everybody is in the battle between life and death. So lots of predatory response behavior that we see. And the more animals there are, the safer they feel. And you start to see other animals joining. Yes, here come two big bull kudu, slowly making their way. And you hear those zebra calling now as well. Still hearing the Namakwa sandgrass, and that's what I say. Early mornings, that's what you hear here at the Okukuyu waterhole. Summer, winter, rainy or not, they're always here in the early mornings. And always special to see the animals going so deep into the water. They don't have that threat of crocodiles, so no problem to do so. There was a lonely springbok having a swim earlier as well. And here come the swimming gemsbok. Fold up very quickly. Still no sign of the Umbiko pride of lions. I think they're probably down closer to their namesake, the Umbiko waterhole. And as the season progresses, we'll start to see them here more and more as well. As it starts to get drier, the animals are going to really be frequenting this particular waterhole. As you can see, the numbers are growing each and every day. And with that, the lions eventually follow.
Wild Show has aired. The curtain has begun descending. But wait, you didn't catch all the episodes live. We are proud to announce that all 24 episodes of The Wild Show are available on the app.
Can we stop there, please? Because
Watch out for The Wild Show Carousel, only on the app.
let's push play on this episode of The Wild Show.
Those are decent specimens as well. The kudu, I mean. Those big horns. And they've also had to walk quite a distance out of the thickets and their preferred habitat. So they'll have their back to the Mopani woodlands, and those ones off to the west, straight behind the waterhole. That's where we do see a lot of the kudu spending most of their time. Quinton, lions, they can enter the waterhole to catch their prey. Sometimes if they surprise them at the last minute, the animals can run into the water itself. But you'll see here that it doesn't get too deep. So what the lions would mostly do is if an animal's run in, then if there's a few of them in particular, the lions will spread out around this waterhole and wait for the animal to come towards them, or try to exit, and then they'll take them out from there. So they won't be able to spend much time escaping from the lions in the middle of the water, but they could still be chased right into the water as well. I've seen that happening here with zebras, but the zebras just literally ran right through the water and then escaped out on the other side. So yeah, lions aren't scared of water on many occasions, especially when it's very hot, even going and wallowing in the water. I've seen them do it in Namibia. I've also seen them do it in the Lowveld, in the Salati River, actually lying in the river, just with their head above the water, and cooling off. So it goes against the norm of what we think with cats generally not liking water. At times they love it. And I've seen so for myself. And it's beautiful sightings when you see big male lions wallowing. Incredible. You see these kudu, they're still very wary. They put their heads down to drink, but they're constantly picking their heads up and looking around. You see what I mean? So many animals about, it's lowering the risk involved coming to drink. Oh, what happened now? Let's have a look. Let's zoom out. Very often false alarms because there's so much happening, and one animal just runs and then they all get a fright, and then mostly, I'd say 9 out of 10 times they get spooked like that. It's purely for nothing. Sometimes it's the birds that are flitting in and out that actually surprises them and makes one of them get a fright, and then they all do. It's another one of those anti-predator behaviors. It pays off to copy. If any animal's running, to run as well. I love that sound of the Namakwa sandgrass. It really reminds me of being here in person. And the springbok do seem to prefer it here in the foreground. They seem to take up this space. The zebra generally on the other side. Most of the animals on the other side. The black-faced impala and the kudu, so the browsing animals, seem to like this left-hand corner. They like to drink over there. So it does seem that there are preferences between the different animals. Now what is going on? Is it another false alarm? Seems like it. Now you hear the wildebeest calling. Ooh. Sounds a bit like my basset hound when he barks. Slightly different. But not too far off, I must say. Andrew, the video guy. Welcome aboard. Animals definitely have the ability to smell water. Some more than others. Obviously, elephants have been, through research, have been judged as having the strongest sense of smell of all the animals out there. But generally, you would say that the most important sense for any animal out here in the wild is their sense of smell. So whether that's picking up predators or sensing or smelling where the water is, then it's obviously very, very important, because sometimes they have to operate in low light conditions at night. So the smell is the biggest sense that creates reaction. So what you also see, a lot of the spookiness, sometimes they can just pick up a smell that they're not accustomed to, or that could indicate there's a predator, and that's why you see them bolting away from the water. But when we talk of water, you know, when you can smell rain off in the distance, I would say we don't have a very acute sense of smell. Some people obviously more than others. But the more you're out in the bush, and I've spent many years looking after camps in wilderness areas, also taking guests to very remote regions and spending a lot of time out in the bush, especially during my trekking safaris, where we were on foot all the time. From hearing, but I would say the one that increases the most when you're in a wilderness setting over a period of time is your sense of smell. And you start to pick up these small, subtle differences between everything that you are smelling. Whereas when you're in an urban environment, you start to lose these acuteness. Actually them out. There's a lot of smelly things. There's a lot of loud noises. There's a lot of terrible sights. So we actually start blocking that. Whereas when you're out in this natural environment, the acuteness returns. And when you're out there, and I've done it many times when I've been out and trekking and so on, and the acuteness has begun to return, and you can smell rain coming off in the distance. And that particular smell, I believe, is what they can smell that's blown in the wind from water points as well. It's not quite the same as what you smell when you get a whiff of an approaching rainstorm, but I think it's pretty similar to that kind of smell. And I think with the acuteness of the animal's sense of smell, I think if the wind blows over the hole off into the distance, I definitely believe the animals can smell it and they can walk in the direction of that smell and they'll be able to find water. Elephants can do this. They can find where the rain has come from. They can also smell where there's water underground and they can dig it open and make it available to other animals. So yes, to answer your question, I definitely believe that they can smell water. So while we watch the Okukuyu waterhole ebb and flow, and I'm hoping that we do get a glimpse of the Umbika Pride of Lions, if we're lucky today, who knows? But while I cross my fingers and my toes, let's head you on over to Andrew and Amakhala to say good morning.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to another day on safari with us out here in the Eastern Cape, here at Amakhala Game Reserve, where we're coming to you live from. And we started off quite well. We've got the three amigos, but we're just waiting for them to come out. They do have a red hartebeest kill. So let's just wait a little bit and see what they're going to get up to. Morning. My name's Andrew, and Morgan, he's behind the camera. And I think it's a great start to a great day with the three amigos here. Not too far from where we're living, actually. They've managed to catch a red hartebeest. I don't know how much is left of the kill, but I can promise you this, their condition is going to be great. They've actually dragged it into quite a nice little spot there. We can't even see the kill from here, but there's a few crows busy flying around, and there's even one perched in a tree, so they know fully well that there's a kill over there. But now with these three amigos present, I doubt those crows will do anything. It's the pied crow that's around here. It's just amazing how on some days, when we go looking for the three amigos, we can search and not even see a footprint. And then on other days, they just make it so easy for us. Yeah, so as you all know, these three amigos are doing extremely well here in Amakhala from the moment they were introduced here. And they have explored quite a bit, I must say. They already know where the Northerns is, which is great for them. So they know how to get through the tunnel. They know the main reserve as well. And there has been a few sightings of, lions nearby them. And to see them, how they react, they're acting sort of correctly, just to pack up shop and move away. And that's exactly what they're doing. So very smart like that. And yeah, we are looking forward to working with them for many more years to come. So we're just going to stick it out here for the time being. Just going to to see if they do present themselves to us. We know exactly where they are. So far, I've only seen 2 of the 3, but the third one is most definitely there. And it's just crazy how, there's a kill there, plus 3 cheetahs, yet there's a small bush in the way and you wouldn't even know. We actually drove here and Morgan was the one that said, there they are. I would have missed them completely. Good one. We're going to stick around here. This is going to get exciting, I hope. But in the meantime, let's go to Madikwe Game Reserve with Lauren. She wants to say good morning.
Oh, Andrew, I hope our sighting is about to get a little bit more exciting. Sadly, our lion just popped his head down, and now we don't have really any visual at all. This is a dark-maned mahiwa on a wildebeest kill. Good morning, my name is Lauren. I do have Rian on camera, and it's very hot. So we may not stay here too long if he is too flat. Yes, he's just gone straight to sleep. Of course, he's tired and, well, I don't know when he caught this wildebeest, but hunting is exhausting. So he's just going to rest in the shade. He's under this lovely thicket, lots of juvenile shepherd's trees around here, but you have to be careful not to drive over. And he may wake up, he may have a feed, he may go back to sleep again. And he's got to recuperate all that energy from hunting. It really eats into the energetic budget. And energy is the currency out here. Not dollars, not pounds, not rands. It's energetics. And humans it is too, we just don't realize that. But it's all about your energy budget. You cannot go into deficit. And a lot of activities that many of the animals do out here does really eat into their budget, like territorial patrol, like hunting, like lactation. All of these can be very, very costly for an animal, which means they'll need to hunt more and which means they'll need to feed more. We get asked a lot, how often does an animal need to hunt? How long will it take them to finish their carcass? And this is a really difficult question to answer because I really have no idea how long it'll take him. Don't know when he last ate, don't know how his energy budget is doing, and don't know how hungry he is. You know what it's like when we're full and we've had a big meal, we're really not ready to eat again. We may continue to snack because, well, we just might. But it takes a while before you're hungry again. So it's a very difficult question to answer. And that's because ultimately it boils down to energetics. Dark mane lover, of course he is. I'm just not sure you could see him. But yes, of course he is. He's stunning. The mahiwas are really quite something a force to be reckoned with. Far bigger than the avokas, and I would say the S8 male too. Really big, gorgeous lions. But we just don't have the best view. We're in a bit of a tricky spot. We were only going to stay here for a short while anyway, and then we were going to head to Clos Dam. And most likely will be the last time I'm at Clos Dam before I leave. And of course, it's so spectacular that why not? But it's hard. When it gets hot, it's really hard to expect much activity out of a lot of the animals here, especially the nocturnal predators. And that's why they do the sunrise and the sunset safari. One, it's more pleasant for guests rather than driving around in this heat. But two, that's when the animals are the most active, both diurnal and nocturnal. Maybe elephants are your only exclusion to that, but of course he's going to want to sleep away this heat. That's a gorgeous orange-tip butterfly, I think. It just fluttered into flame there. Well, we might sit and wait a little bit longer. It'd be lovely to show you his face, but for now, we're going to send you guys over to Ralph.
Well, now we're at the Djuma waterhole, and we do have a little bit of a view on one of our resident brown-headed parrots, but it is being a little bit camera shy, and also we have quite a bit of wind around, so there's a bit of a wobble on the camera. However, we will just keep our eyes on this little guy if we can. But you can see there, lots of moving and shaking. There we are. There's the nest itself. And this is a tree that's just off to the right of the camera itself. But yes, lots of wind around, so quite a bit of wobble. And just so you know, this is the Djuma waterhole camera that's in the Sabi Sands of the Greater Kruger National Park in South Africa. So quite a big jump from Okukuyu in the Etosha National Park all the way to Amakhala in the Eastern Cape, then up to the northwest, and now to Mpumalanga in the Lowveld. So jumping around quite extensively and seeing a lovely array of different spots around the country and internationally, going all the way up into Namibia as well. So these parrots have been around for quite a while, and they are fully resident. We don't see them every day because sometimes when we do start Escape to Nature, they're out foraging. But maybe with it being so windy, this one is maybe going to spend more time at home. Beautiful colors on this parrot, as you would expect on parrots. They're normally quite extravagant in their colors. And it's not always easy doing birding, or at least getting them on camera. So it's been wonderful with this resident pair because we can always look at the hole, which is pointing in the perfect direction, luckily for us, and then we can often see them. I think that was a fork-tailed drongo that did a bit of a flyby. Looks like it may be busy with a little bit of nest maintenance. Spring cleaning needs to be done. And this particular tree has been ring-barked by the elephants, so it is dead. No new growth. The tree next to it, I think, has been lucky that it hasn't been completely stripped all the way around the trunk, nearly, but it's just hanging on. As you see that parrot now disappearing into the hole. I think it can't bear the wind. Is it going to come out again? Maybe not. Yesterday we did have a lovely herd of elephants coming down to drink at the waterhole, and we did enjoy the hippos as well, the youngsters. They're generally quite playful, and so yesterday was no different. Then you can see how the tree has indeed been ring-barked by the elephants. And we often do see the likes of squirrels on the tree here, and they do have a little bit of conflict with the parrots. Well, the parrots don't really being around, but I haven't seen the squirrels for quite a while. They very often also even jump up onto the camera itself. I just see there's a lizard or something moving up that branch. You can actually see where the tusks were pushed into that bark and pushed up, and then they grab the bark that's been sort of pushed off of the inner cambium, and then they strip it. Is that a little drongo that we saw last a bit earlier? And there goes the drongo, who are very established mimickers as well. So they have their own call, which we like to say is like the R2D2 of Star Wars. R2D2. That's a kind of traditional call of their own, but they'll very often mimic the likes of pearl-spotted owlets. In the Eastern Cape, we often hear them mimicking the jackal buzzards. So what actually happens is, especially when you get bird parties as a result of some kind of increase in a food source, and you have lots of birds coming down to feed on that. For example, when the alates, the termites, are coming out of the ground after the rains, there's lots of food, but lots of birds coming down to compete for that. And then you hear the drongos giving off the call of the local raptors, and then the birds get a fright and they fly off, and it just gives it some gaps to have less competition to gather food. So very clever little birds are the drongos. I'd say they're like the honey badgers of the sky. They're not really scared of anything. And when you do see birds of prey around, if there's a bird bombing it, it's most likely a drongo. They're not really scared of anything. And yesterday there was also some southern ground hornbills here as well. And they came and rested up in the shade right underneath the camera. So it was a lovely sighting. Wonder if we'll see them today again. Bundu Bash, you're very welcome. It was a lovely sighting, wasn't it? I think we got a brew, one of my favorite names of a bird in the South African bush. Hey, brew, the telephone. The old telephones, those ones that used to wind round in circles and have to wait for it to come back before you could do your next number. I remember those telephones sounding very much like a brew. Just seeing what else is hanging around these trees. Is the parrot still there? I think it's still in the hole, not showing itself. You often see them out on that stick that's just above the hole itself. It's very nice. Normally, especially when both of them are there. And yeah, the wind is playing a bit of havoc. There comes one of them. I'm not sure if the other one is in there or if it's just one and the other one is off foraging. I think it's only one. He's acting like the little dwarf mongoose, and mongoose in general, when they don't want to come out of their burrows, when it's cold in the morning. You often see them just poking their heads out and then going back inside, like it's too cold. Not yet. I think this one is thinking it's too windy. Andrew, the video guy. Yeah, they definitely are fantastic photography subjects, especially in the mating season. 100% agree with you there. Chat, but it's a little bit inactive there now. So let's just see if he comes out. Otherwise, we will shift. Okay, it's a little bit quiet. So I think let's head on back to Okukuyu, where it's still rather busy. And what I like now that we've returned is we've got a black-faced impala here in amongst the other animals, mainly springbok, zebra, and bliss. Let's go on in here and have a nice close look if we can, if he doesn't disappear. Get down a bit at this very special animal of Namibia. Endemic, found him nowhere else in the world. They're a bit darker than your common impala, as well as quite a bit larger as well. And these guys are magnificent photographic subjects, especially when you have a few of them in a line facing you with those beautiful black markings on their face, coming down the nose and also down underneath their eyes. Let's get in even closer and see if we can see a bit more detail on him. Their horns are quite a bit bigger than the common impala as well. So generally a larger animal, not massively, but you can notice it, and you notice how much darker they are as well. Lenny, good question. I don't like to take favorites, but if I have to, I would definitely have to say Gemsbok or Oryx. And then I do have a soft spot for Eland as well, being the rainbow chasers. But I think to be Gemsbok. Number 3, I would do probably Springbok. Just their true specialization in the desert and being able to live in inhospitable environments, just like the Oryx or the Gemsbok. So I think in that sense, all those 3 are because of the sort of desert adaptations that they do have and the kind of landscapes and situations that are found Oryx, Springbok, and Eland in, and just those magical moments where I've been in their presence is what wins it for me for those 3. So particularly when out on foot in the rocky desert of Damaraland with groups of guests from, the majority I had was from France, Donc ça c'est la raison, je parle français. Still hearing the calls of the Namaqua sandgrass. Lovely call. Definitely a lot less wind here as well. Looks like it is once again an easterly, which does bode for very high temperatures, as we know. The legendary east wind in Namibia. It's like the wind that you get in France, Le Mistral, also a legendary wind that comes through particular times of the year. The east wind in Namibia is what creates those desert storms and blowing all the sand and making everything extremely hot. We always talk of a wind chill factor, but in Namibia, especially in winter, you need to also factor in the wind heat factor. It's incredible. Especially when you're down at the coast. It wouldn't be as hot, the wind, I mean, here, because it's still got a long way to travel across the desert. But it is still a warm wind. When you get to the coast, however, it's a hot wind. It can sometimes feel like somebody's opened the oven and put a fan on it and it's blowing in your face. It literally feels like that. And with sand included in it, with mica as well. It's a very glittery type, dusty wind that's pretty hot. Once again, a constant flow. And it seems like just around about 10 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock is when things do heat up here. And I'm speaking not of the temperature, I mean of the flow of animals. In the early mornings, it's normally pretty quiet. That's when you might still have some of the predators coming through, lions, jackals, hyenas. But then this time of the day, as it starts heating nicely, that's when they all start coming down. Lots more lining up in the background there to come through. Looks like mainly blue wildebeest. And some gemsbok as well. The springbok do really enjoy swimming around a bit. They seem to be quite good swimmers at that. Here come the oryx. My guess is they're going to move right into the middle, since they do prefer it on the center spot. Let's have a look. There's always one that goes all the way. And that lonely little grebe. That thing has been around. I'm sure that is the same one that I've seen for a couple of years. And it always looks like it's looking for company. But I'm not. On the other hand, I often have to think that with the animals moving in the water, I think they might be kicking up potential food. So with my thoughts of it just being lonely and going closer to the animals when they do come in, I think there's a little bit to it. And as I say, he often goes up to them and then he disappears underwater. And I think he might be foraging underneath because, as you can see, there's nothing really else for it to feed on around the banks or it. So there might be algae and stuff that's in the mud on the bottom, with there being a lot of dung water as well. You often see the elephants, they walk right into the middle of this reservoir and defecate while they're drinking. And so I think with a lot of that organic material at the bottom, there's probably a lot of algae growth. And so maybe that's what it's feeding on. I can't tell for sure. That's just my thoughts. There's some kudu coming through there on the top as well. Now the females. Earlier it was just a couple of bulls. Yeah, Bundu Bash, absolutely. It's just incredible. And it's just going to get more and more. But it really does look like a Garden of Eden. However, very inhospitable environment. Look at that. I mean, it's just stones. There's a couple of bushes in the background. But, you know, a lot of people are very surprised at how these animals can sustain themselves when there is seemingly very little grass for them to feed on. Now, it doesn't mean that there isn't any grass. It's just in this direct vicinity, because of the sheer numbers of animals that move in and around here, it's the grass is way off there into the mopani and acacia scrub in the background. And then there are areas where there is a lot of grass, but nothing very close to this waterhole. They've got to walk quite big distances between drink and feeding sites. You might see the springbok just feeding a little bit here in the foreground. Some of the remnants of the Bushman grass, Stipagrostis species. There's not much of it left. A couple of months ago, it was super green and the grass was growing here, but you just notice how quickly the animals hammer it. And that's why I've spoken a lot about water management and placement on wilderness areas, and how you can manipulate animals to move into other areas, which is underutilized, and in so doing manipulate the succession of and the veld within a particular zone. This is a permanent waterhole, and I don't see it changing, just for the mere fact that the park is, the camp is here, and so this is a massive tourist spot. So the potential for the grass even receding even further from this waterhole is high because of the movements of the animals, the grazing and the trampling. It does create then, you know, a bit more of a desertified zone, and you might only have then the grass growing immediately after the rain, but it's very quickly gobbled up by the animals moving down to come and drink and having food along the way, or while, you know, before, after they have drunk. So yeah, it's important to really manage where your placement of waterholes are. But in this instance, the animals are just going to have to walk to get between the two resources of food and water.
Wildwood's mission is an expensive one, but we know that our live experience is important to so many people that cannot afford to pay for it. We have added a donate button to our website. By donating, You're directly helping us share our free nature experiences with the world. We want Wild Earth to reach children, budding conservationists, and the less fortunate. A little money goes a long way. You can make a difference to someone today.
And so, although apex predators such as lions, cheetah, hyenas, and the likes may seem to have a detrimental effect on different species because they kill and eat them, but with what I've just spoken about in mind, how it literally makes animals more witty and physically stronger, I think it has, in the long term, a very good and positive impact on the herd species. So that is a wonderful topic to chat about, and like I believe these animals are a lot fitter and stronger than the ones down in the Northern Territory of Amakhala. And speaking of the Northern Territory of Amakhala, off you go to Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. Yeah, the three amigos, they have been popping up every now and then. They seem to be sort of just getting up and shifting a little bit, probably to get to a better place in the carcass. So when that happens, we get to see some of them at least. But it's just amazing that bush is just so small and they're right behind it and we barely see them. I just love how they camouflage, don't you? I'm not sure when this hartebeest was killed. It could have been sometime last night. From what I've heard from the other guides, it sounds like there's not too much meat left. So presumably last night sometime or a little bit earlier than that. And with 3 male cheetahs feeding, depending on the size of the hartebeest, it's not really going to last that long. There's a little bit of the back just sticking up now. Yeah, I was just thinking now that they're actually in such a nice place because although it is sunny today, it's a little bit cool. And for them, they are, of course, eating, but then they're also getting nice and warm in the sun. But yeah, I think when this carcass is finished, they're going to probably look for water, which is not too far from here, luckily at Jojo's Waterhole. It's one of their places where they do drink. And there's lots of game on that side as well. Plenty of mountain zebra, sometimes the eland and blesbok. Then Morgan also made an interesting observation. So where we're staying, usually when we open our door and we look out into the bush, up the dunes, we usually see a nice big group of eland that hang around there. And there used to be a giraffe that used to hang around that group of eland as well. But, you know, since these 3 male cheetahs have figured out how to get into the northerns, and they walk around quite a bit up here, and they're also hunting a lot up here, it's amazing how the behavior of the rest of the game has now altered a little bit. A lot of the animals are extremely nervous. Just one little, noise and they become quite stressed. And we don't see the elands outside our house anymore. Now, with that particular group of eland that I'm talking about, we know that these 3 amigos have already caught one of the adult females. And when I messaged Ralph, because I like to keep in contact with him sometimes and know what's happening, and I mentioned to him that they managed to catch a full-grown female eland, I don't think he was surprised, but still very impressed. Morning, Lolly. It's good news for them, definitely. They're going to pick up their condition, but their condition has been great for this whole stint that I've been here, which is almost 5 weeks, and I'm going to be going on for a few more weeks. I'm going to be doing a total of about 8 weeks, close to. And since I've been, watching these cheetah, and we find them sometimes, just their condition is really, really great all the time. But that can change, of course. They're in their prime at the moment, and they're still quite young. But they do go through these starvation periods, and that's normal with cats. More so with lions. They manage to catch something and they get an excellent condition. And then it's quite some time sometimes that they don't catch something and they lose a great deal of condition. Now with these cheetahs, they've been very consistent in their condition for the last few weeks, which is great for them. Okay, so it doesn't look like too much is happening here visually, and we can't really see them too well. But I think let's go to Lauren in Madikwe for now and see what she's got.
We actually left our dark mane Mahiwa because he was too flat, really. There was no way Rian and I could survive that. And as we were on our way to Clo Dam, we've come across 2 ladies. Not sure if you were able to see the other one, but there are 2 there before. And I often tell the story of Davi and I at Clo Dam. In the very, very first week we were here, and we were just sitting watching life go round at the dam. And all of a sudden 2 lionesses rushed out of nowhere and killed a warthog. Then they moved on and immediately killed an impala. I'm sure you've heard that story. Well, these are the lionesses. Hello, beautiful. I haven't seen you in a while. But you look fantastic. You look hot, but you look thick and full and in wonderful condition. And Rian and I were actually speaking about this yesterday, one of our many conversations on Drive, that all the animals in Madikwe look in really good condition. I have obviously done quite a few seasons now. I think I've been here the most. And even in winter, even in summer, now we're in spring. I really, no, we're not. We're in autumn, sorry. And I say autumn very loosely in South Africa. It doesn't really exist. The transition season. And I've never seen sort of mangy looking ill animals. Now, of course, illnesses can be on the inside and not always visible on the outside, but an animal's condition can give a lot away. All the animals look great. I mean, we do see zebra. We saw one yesterday with big claw marks down its bum, and oh, it's not in good condition, but that's because of a lion. It's not because of the sort of general health. Hello, ladies. There's a male not too far away, but I'm guessing you guys know that. Be lovely to see you go to Clodagh, but it's quite the distance. Oh, you're very attractive. It's actually nice to see lions again, I must say. Spending a lot of time with elephants, even buffalo, cheetah. Yesterday, wild dogs, but it wasn't too successful. It's just lovely to see lions again. Madikwe has so many after all. I'm not sure she's done a very good job of actually getting into the shade. The sun is burning and there's quite a lot of sun on her. I think she could have found a better patch. This one is a much better patch. There's no sun on you. Just going to move. The sun is catching up with me. Darcy Miller, yes, they're gorgeous. They are gorgeous. There we go. Mostly in the shade now. I have done a better job than that lioness. But I imagine they're on their way somewhere, but it's hot. And even although they have different sort of TRP channels than we do, they have different heat sensors than we do, they're fundamentally the same, but they're programmed to different temperatures. They will still feel this heat. And that's why a lot of the predators will be completely flat. And at this time of day, and for the next foreseeable, being in a dam is a much better choice. So we'll spend a little bit of time with these females, but we will head on to Clodagh. It's fascinating to think that we're all made up of the same proteins, really, but we're also fundamentally different. And how we experience heat and cold isn't going to be the same as how other organisms across the board experience hot and cold. The proteins that make up the heat sensors are the same. Protein's protein. But their thermostat, what those sort of proteins and channels are set at, is not the same. And of course it would have to be that way, because if we slept out in the wild night after night, particularly in the coldest of areas, it would be almost impossible for us. But all the animals out here in the wild have to. So they will feel the cold, but I really don't believe they feel it as cold as we do. Isn't that right, girl? For all the same reasons that all the animals have collars. It's not a different reason. They are monitored for scientific purposes. But we don't have the information from that collar, and it's not sort of given to the general public or guides, that's for sure. But information is gleaned on their movements, where they're going, where they are. Researchers can keep up with them. Same as a cheetah, same as an elephant, same as a hyena, for scientific research. Netiquette also monitor the health of the animal populations. And for example, with the cheetah, when you reintroduce them, it's a huge operation to reintroduce. And therefore you want to know the well-being of that animal. You want to know if the reintroduction has been successful, especially in the likes of cheetah that are endangered and have a sort of more threat to their genetic integrity. And having a collar on that animal just allows you to keep up with that animal. There's a nice breeze coming through. I just wish it was stronger. The birds are chirping, and at least the girls have got their heads up. To think we're going into winter and the temperatures are this strong, you can only imagine what it's like in summer. Summer is tough here. Hot, hot summers, cold, cold winters. All the species need to be adapted for both. In Scotland, we don't get hot, hot summers. We get very cold winters and mediocre summers. If that. There's something so peaceful about just watching these animals. They're getting sleepy now. I can understand. I can't see if they're full-bellied or not. I don't think so. They're not empty-bellied though, that's for sure. We're panting heavily, and this might be them for the rest of the afternoon, just lying here. And I wish Clodagh was closer, but it's not. They may end up there. But that's not happening anytime soon, I'm afraid. We are going to head there, though, because I'm sure there's going to be lots of activity going on. There always is. So what a lucky find, finding these girls. And it's a day of cats, I think, because we're now going to send you over to Andrew with the cheetahs.
I totally agree with you, Lauren. Looks like it is definitely a day of cats. And we're still waiting for these 3 male cheetahs to show themselves, and currently it looks like one just might do that. You can see a bit of the back, a bit of the head, a bit of the tail. But they've been doing this ever since we've been here. They've been sort of out of sight, and then suddenly they're in sight. And yeah, so we're just going to stick around, see what's going to happen. You just never know. Maybe one of them decides, I'm nice and full. I would like to just go and lie down somewhere and walk across this open area trying to look for some shade. But we'll just see what happens. There we go, almost looking at us. There we go, look at that. Ah, thank you so much. That's exactly what I was talking about. No, change the mind. Spoke too soon, that's it. Might just lay under that bush over there. It's a nice little cave there in that bush. A little bit of an entrance there. Might just lay at the base of that entrance. So it actually seems like these 3 male cheetahs, when they go further north from here, they get up to sort of like the Safari Lodge area. And around there, for many, many years, Nyala antelope have been walking around there, and they breed and so on. And I remember myself with BK, when I first did my very first stint here in Amakhala Game Reserve, we were based up at Safari Lodge. We were staying in a guest accommodation, which was lovely, by the way. But we noticed lots of Nyalas out there, and some of them even had little lambs. And these cheetahs have figured out that those Nyalas are very accessible and they're catchable, and they've already caught quite a few as we speak. One thing we have noticed with antelopes, but most especially with Nyala antelope and bushbuck, when they go into the sort of the camp environments and they start to live around there, they feel that because of the lack of predators around, that they don't need to be as vigilant. And I remember when I was at Bukela the one day, I saw a bushbuck walk out the bush. And this bushbuck had its head on the ground, picking up all sorts of things, and didn't look up once for a period of time. And this could actually lead to their downfall, because they sort of feel what's the word I'm looking for? It's a sense of security around these camps, and they become quite relaxed. And I think that's the reason why these cheetahs are catching so many in Nyala at the moment. Darcy, good morning to you. There's been the odd sighting here and there, but in all honesty, we have our hands, and not just ourselves, but also the guides. They have their hands full with these 3 male cheetahs, and so the amount of guides that go looking for Phumelela, it's sort of just slowed down a little bit. But every now and then we do get updates from her and of her. She's doing very well still. And at some point we will go through there. We have tried to go through there a few times, and it's quite difficult to find her, But at some point, we will definitely give you all an update and we'll show you how good she's looking. Now, but she's doing very, very well at the moment. The other day, she caught a blesbok. So she's doing fantastic. But we went into Carnarvondale the one morning, myself and Morgan, and we went into the eastern part of Carnarvondale. And let me tell you, I was truly blown away to explore that part of the reserve with Morgan. It was really an adventure. And we found all these nice little valleys, and we explored a lot, I won't lie. We got carried away in there. And so many different plants that are growing in there that doesn't really grow in the main reserve, like the amount of spekboom. There is spekboom in the main reserve, don't get me wrong, but not nearly like there in the eastern part of Carnarvondale. And we also found this old viewing deck that hasn't been used for a very long time. So the planks were a little bit rotten in a way, and we were sort of just standing on that deck, trying to look over the edge, but also worried that we were going to fall through the deck. And so, yeah, Morgan, the director, was directing that morning, and the camera was facing towards the deck. Obviously, I didn't know this. And I was testing the planks by walking on them, and Morgan was freaked out. She thought I was going to fall right through the planks. We found beautiful aloes there in that eastern section of Carnarvondale as well. And I mean huge. So I'm not sure how many meters from the ground our roof is to the vehicle. How many do you think, Morgan? 2.5 meters? Maybe a bit more? Yeah. About 2.5 meters from the ground, so the base of our tire, all the way to the tallest part of our roof. It's about 2.5 meters. Now, some of the Aloepherox, the bitter aloes out there, are double the size of this vehicle. So some of those aloes are 5 meters tall, if not taller. I was astounded. It's the biggest aloes I've ever seen in my entire life. We noticed also in the eastern part of Carnarvondale, and I'm sure there'll be some more areas there, but we noticed some Stone Age tool making sites there as well. And the more you look and you find these rocks on the ground, the more you realize that there's actually quite a few Stone Age sites, tool making sites here in Amakhala. One of the areas where we did our drive, we went up one of these drop-offs. We call it the drop-off. But anyways, we were driving up, and in these drop-offs, unfortunately, we don't get a good signal there, so it's very difficult to show you what we found. But we found a whole lot of shells in a midden, and that's very interesting what was happening here. So there was the strandloper, which is a specialized type of a bushman that found the coastline, the marine environments, and specialized in eating shells and fish and things like that. And often when they used to go forage in the bush and collect a whole bunch of crustaceans and shells, and they would all sit somewhere, eat on those shells, and just discard the shells over their shoulders. And because of that, there's a pile, and quite a nice pile of these shells. It's what we call a strandloper midden. Okay, so we're being very patient with these cheetah. Hopefully they'll come out again. But let's go to Ukukuyo Waterhole with Ralph in the meantime.
Nice, Andrew. Seems like you and Lauren are having nice predator luck, but with a nice hot day and with a bit of food around, it seems like they're probably going to be inactive. A little bit different to the animals that we have here at Okukuyu. But with that in mind, I think it's appropriate to chat about a subject around the daily patterns of activity with wildlife. And it's not merely a preference sometimes for when animals are actually active. And when you look at animals that have a preference for the dark, that leads nocturnal animals to be active at night instead of during the day. Now, whether animals are day active or night active is strictly predetermined, actually, for it is important, and perhaps more so in deserts than elsewhere, that they contain reasonable timetables for foraging, grooming, resting, or any other daily activity. And it would be inappropriate for a bat, for instance, to suddenly decide to go foraging at midday over the Kalahari Desert in search of moths. Not a chance is extremely remote that it would find any moths, for they themselves are nocturnal, but it is far more probable that the bat would die either of thirst or be caught by a bird of prey. So given the huge the daily fluctuations in deserts of such factors as temperature and the water vapor saturation deficit, the differences between daytime and nighttime conditions are far too large to permit us to deviate from the activity time for which they are best adapted. Moreover, they would expose themselves to predators to which completely unaccustomed to, which they may therefore possess no appropriate defense responses. Fortunately, desert animals seldom stray from their activity programs, and when they do so in response to seasonal changes or unpredictable climatic events. Natural selection has weeded out individual decision-making processes in animals that may lead to ill-timed actions. Instead, each animal is regulated by its circadian clock, a physiological timekeeping mechanism which is crucial to the biology of all organisms and governs many of the time-out practices. In vertebrates, the circadian clock resides in the hypothalamus in the brain, and individuals having control over its settings and how it functions respond subconsciously to the instructions that it issues. An excellent example of its function in humans is the jet lag experience. After a transatlantic flight from Europe to America, a traveler wakes up at midnight feeling bright and ready to start the day. His circadian clock is faithfully providing a wake-up call as it did the previous morning in Europe. So his body thinks that it is 7 o'clock when it is really midnight. And that's most disconcerting. If you've ever experienced that, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it takes the clock about 1 day for every hour to readjust to what it perceives as a sudden 7-hour shift of the Earth's light-dark cycle. The clocks of most desert organisms prescribe a nocturnal activity pattern so that the creature effectively takes time out from the heat day. Typically, desert organisms spend the daylight hours under rocks, in rocky crevices, in nests, in holes in trees, or under the loose bark on tree trunks. Alternatively, they seek refuge underground in burrows, dens, or dens. In fact, the ability to burrow or to exploit burrows already built is absolutely crucial to the survival of the majority of desert animals. Nocturnal desert dwellers escape the desiccating power of the desert air in the first place by remaining in the favorable microclimate provided by their refuges during the day, restricting their water loss to the absolute minimum. Then, when they emerge at night, the air has lost much of its drying power as a result of the considerable drop in the water vapor saturation deficit, which follows the nocturnal decrease in the air temperature. Although most animals are abroad at night, this certainly does not mean that there's no action in the desert during the day, as we're seeing here at the Okukuyu waterhole. Provided that an animal is well adapted to keeping its water loss at a low level, there can be distinct advantages to being diurnal or active. Fewer predators are around, and there may be less competition for food. Indeed, the specialized adaptations which have been discussed make diurnal activity possible and can now be appreciated to the full. In this respect, the Tenebrianid beetles, or the toktokis, or the F1 beetles, as I like to call them, as a group surely provide the most spectacular examples of successful daytime living. A number of tribes make up the family Tenebrianidae, of which one, the Zophycini, comprises only genera that are diurnal. Another tribe, the Adosmini, is predominantly diurnal and includes two well-known genera, Onomacris and Stenocara, in a study in which the activity patterns of 43 different Tenobrenid beetle species were recorded in the Namib Desert. 42% of the species were found to be diurnal, and a similar pattern was recorded in a survey in the vegetated dunes of the southern Kalahari Desert, where out of 51 species studied, 37 species, or 37%, were diurnal. And it can be quite safely argued that the subelytral cavity and its usefulness in restricting respiratory water adaptations, which has permitted Tenobrenid beetles to move about on the sand surface during the day. Also to be considered are the beetles' interesting behavioral adaptations for capturing water, such as fog basking and trench digging. So it's really, really interesting, I think, to understand the different daily patterns of activities of different species of animals and whether they're nocturnal, diurnal. But it also seems that animals don't have the luxury of deciding for themselves. It's literally inherent from their circadian rhythm as it is with us as humans. So we're not that dissimilar from the animals living out here in the wild. We like to think so, but just take a transatlantic flight and then you'll get jet lag and you'll be reminded that we're just the same. And that's when you can also understand when you have sports teams that have to fly across, transatlantic, and when they underperform, when they played at home or on a short distance flight or whatever, you can see the performance levels of those sportsmen and women being at an optimum, whereas if they have to perform shortly after that transatlantic flight, their performance is significantly reduced. And I think most of it is down to that circadian rhythm being disrupted and jet lag resulting. I had jet lag when I flew to Vietnam. That was the first time I experienced it because I'd always not flown east to west or west to east. I'd always flown just north to south to Europe. There's no change in the circadian rhythm when you fly in that direction. But when I flew to Vietnam, it took me about 4 days to get over the change and the significant hours, that difference between South Africa and Vietnam. So I felt it for myself, and I tell you what, it's a big influence in your performance, whether it's mental or physical. For me, it was mainly mental, because you just can't sleep when you want to, and then you're tired when you're supposed to be awake. It's incredible. Cat lover, yeah, I always try to bring something different each day. So I'm glad that you appreciate that that's something different and interesting. I hope it's interesting. I find lots of these principles and phenomenons worthy of introspection. I don't think that everything just happens because it happens. I think there's a lot of programming and a lot of it inherent. There's and a lot of evolution. There's just so much to talk about. But different topics, different days. It's wonderful to jump into them and discuss them and bring it all out. It's especially while we're watching wildlife, that are exhibiting all these kind of behaviors that we may think is strange or unusual. But the more you're around wild animals that are adapting to their environment, you can see a lot of rhythms or averages starts to lean towards a specific reason behind different behaviors. And those are the things that I like exploring. I've worked in the desert for many, many years, and just the sheer amount of different species that survive in that very inhospitable environment, but with real evolutionary adaptations to survive in those very difficult circumstances, is what really tickles my brain, how they've evolved to get to that position and be so successful at that. It's like when you look at those lions and the cheetah that are resting up, a real metabolic increase with animals occurs, particularly so with predators, because they already have a high heart rate. But when you have an increase in temperature, which happens during the day, their metabolism increases proportionally. So on a hot day, like it seems like we have, both in the Eastern Cape as well as in Madikwe, you can understand why those cats are flat, sleeping, because their metabolism is increasing as the temperature is rising. Plus, they've got the added influence of having consumed meat. So the metabolism naturally would have increased, and now they have the increase in temperature, which raises the metabolism even more. So you can understand why they're panting and why they quite literally are tired and not very active. And it's a result of all of that. It's not just because they don't feel like being active and are affected more by the heat. All the animals are affected by the heat, but we've got all these different factors at play. And then you've got those animals that are specially adapted to be able to withstand high temperatures, and none more so than springbok and oryx or gemsbok. But here they've got the luxury of being able to cool down, so it helps with limiting the energy requirement of keeping cool on a hot day. So it just gives them an added energy boost, I believe, for being able to cool down in the water, and then maybe they can walk for longer to go and get food. So it all makes sense if you start to look at all these different factors that come into play. So lots and lots to chat about. I'll have another topic ready for when you return to me. But yeah, let's head on over to Lauren to see her cats with a very high metabolism.
Oh, discussions. I just love them. We're at Clodagh. And it's a different kind of view of Clodagh. The wildebeest are dominating Clodagh right now, and not the elephants, and not the zebra. We positioned in just a slightly different spot. Isn't it beautiful? Wildebeest really thrive here. Obviously not the one that the dark maned Mahiwa is on, but otherwise they really do thrive. It's just stung. There is one elephant, but not the usual herd. I'm sure they're coming. I am more than sure they're coming. I know we'll just have to wait 10 minutes or so and they'll be here. And there was a study, I think it was in 2018. If I am wrong and I am lying about that, oh, is that a kudu? Then apologies. But I'm pretty sure it was around about that time that actually showed the wildebeest's muscles are actually incredibly efficient for its size. And this is more so than other large animals. And it enables them to sort of walk up to 50 miles, even over 5 days without drinking water. Now, they do drink water, it's readily available, they will and they can, but their muscles are incredibly efficient and far more so than their body would suggest. And what that means is, generally speaking, much larger animals are expected to have more efficient muscles than smaller ones because their muscles, or their muscle fibers, should I say, have more capacity to produce energy. So when you look at a wildebeest, yes, bigger than an impala, but still quite medium-sized, really, not the largest of animals. But for their body size, their muscles actually work incredibly efficiently. They don't sort of have to worry about overheating. They don't rely on water to cool themselves. Actually, really efficient animals and sometimes overlooked. I definitely overlooked them for a long time. And a cow's muscles are normally said to be about 42% efficient. But a wildebeest actually clocks in well above their own size because they're smaller than a cow. So you would think that it would be less than 42% efficient, but they actually clock in at 63% efficiency. So for their body size, their muscles are very, very efficient. And this actually contributes to their success, not just in Majikwe, but everywhere. I mean, they're not just a wee bit smaller than a cow, they are a fair bit smaller than a cow. And when you talk about muscle efficiency, you're really talking again about energetics. I touched on that at the start, but also movement and heat management. So no organism really wants to waste heat. They want to be able to store heat on the cold days. They want to be able to lose heat on the hot days. And they want their sort of movement to have enough energy in order to get from A to B. Now, the wildebeest here don't go very far. The wildebeest and Djuma don't go very far. But if you think of the Great Migration and things like that, the animals take on a vast mission. They really sort of go for the top, they go for gold in order to complete that migration. And in order to do so, They have the muscles that are equipped to do so. So when it says 63% efficiency, I guess what I mean is that that's almost 2/3, not quite, but almost. So 2/3 of the energy used by the muscles is actually used in movement rather than wasting heat. It's not a wasteful muscle product. They are efficient. They're efficient at temperature control and movement, directly linking to energetics of that animal. They're really efficient animals. Still no elephants. Looks like a wildebeest kind of day.
Thanks to our wonderful Wild Earth explorers, Wild Earth Kids is back. Your monthly subscriptions have allowed us to relaunch Wild Earth Schools on a weekly basis, every Wednesday for the first hour of the Sunset Safari.
You guys bring a smile to my face every single day.
Sign your class up for a special virtual field trip to Africa, because touching the lives of the future protectors of our Earth truly matters.
Okay, Rian, we are going to move. We need to just reposition to get some shade on the vehicle, I'm afraid. I can withstand heat for a little bit of time, but not that much. So we are just going to loop around and get a better view of all of the ellies. I've popped my sunglasses on just because it's so hot and so bright. And I will just need to let the migration of wildebeest pass. Going from one side of Clodagh to the other. The calves don't even really look like calves anymore. Okay, we're just going to get in a better spot because it's a little bit too hot, and we're going to send you guys back over to Ralph, who's now in Djuma.
So back at Djuma, just continuing on with a little bit of birding. We've got our ringneck dove, or Cape turtle doves, they're up on the left, and then on the bottom right, that's the long-tailed, or the Meaves starling. Sort of unlikely couple, but I think they're just trying to hang on in this pretty strong wind. And they'll normally be facing into the wind, as you can see they both are, because it generally ruffles their feathers and can blow them off a perch if they face the wrong way. Yep. And they've been blown off or flown off regardless. So let's see what else we can find. On that stump, I think it's coming off of the Tamboti, just next to the waterhole. So, folks, as lovely as the Escape to Nature shows have been, we'll be taking a break from them, from the show of Escape to Nature. Today is the penultimate show, the second last, tomorrow being the last show for a little while. Not sure when it will be back, but I'm sure sometime in the future Escape to Nature will return. But Earth have just decided to have a look at it and see how it will be reformatted and so on. The Made and Amakhala locations will continue on the sunrise and sunset safari, and you'll still be able to watch the waterholes on the Wild Earth app. So you're not losing anything, but the show will be taking a break for a little while. So enjoy it while it lasts. Always good to have a look off down the road just to see if there's not anything walking up from there, because very often the animals can use the road as an easily traversed piece of ground, and they very often come up next to that drainage line along the road itself. So always just check there. And then, like yesterday, I like to check around this area because we do often see the ground hornbills. I'll also have a look back at the old tree where pretty much the most activity has been this morning. Even though it is very windy, we do get to see the little parrots. Nothing happening there for now. This gives you a good indication of how strong the wind is. You see the movement of the trees. And it's got that quite hazy look to it. When it's hot and windy, you generally have this funny off color. Leopard lover, fantastic. Be the swimming impala. Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. You can hear a southern black tit here in the background. Small little blackbirds. It's one of the blackbirds. There's not too many blackbirds. It's got a little white streak on its wing. They're small birds, the size of about a sparrow. But they've got quite a distinguishable call. It's very easy to pick them up. There's a chagra calling there as well. Another of the black birds, black-crowned chagra. We used to call them the Bushveld jola, or the yeah, difficult to put that one into straight English. The Bushveld party animal, because it sounds like he's on a drunkard walk when he makes that call. You can imagine him walking down the road, and at the end he goes, wee! The black-crowned chagra. There's a brew still calling. Chukr. Could be an orange-breasted bush shrike, just with a little bit of its call here. I'm not quite sure what that other one is. When it's windy, it can often be quiet across all the locations. The animals do seek shelter, and they can also be a bit skittish. So windy days are not the best of safari days, but we're still hearing a decent amount of birds. Just panning across. Also, you need to note that also, just looking at this road, I've walked down this road many times, tracking leopards, etc. And just the substrate here is, because it's way more of a sandy substrate and granite based generally, it's excellent for tracking. It's one of the best places I've ever been for tracking, and that's the Lowveld in general, because you have a sort of hard underlying substrate of sand, but then on top you have this layer of sand which makes for excellent imprints within that. And each day you can see when there's been wind over it, it does make the tracks a little bit more obscure, and so you can see the freshness of the tracks as well. And just it's just ideal. And when you compare that to the likes of the Eastern Cape, it's completely contrasted, because there it's mainly clay-based soils, and so it's only soft when it's wet, and then when it dries, it literally turns into seemingly rock. It's very hard. So firstly, difficult to tell the freshness of tracks unless it's just rain. Obviously, you can tell that it happened after the rain or during the rain, depending on how you see the track. If you see more rain droplets on top of it, well, you can also see that they would have happened during the rain. And then if no rain droplets on it, but still imprints, it's after the rain. But you can have line tracks that look fresh for months because really rock hard, and so they don't change regardless of how much wind there is. And so the Eastern Cape is particularly difficult. And if you compare it to here, it's chalk and cheese, where you can track and follow and find animals here, literally all of the tracks, and then leading right up to the animal. Whereas in the Eastern Cape, you need to be very intuitive. And you might only find a couple of tracks in certain spots. And then from there, you need to just work out where the animal would probably have moved after that track was left. Because then they've walked over rock hard spots. It's almost like pure rock. And then you can't see anything. So you've just got to guess or use your experience and your knowledge of how these whichever animal you're following, where they usually move, and go in those areas. But to be able to track them from start to finish is almost impossible. So not too much activity apart from the birds. Yesterday there was also a hammerkop here. It was calling as well, but it was also foraging a little bit, trying to catch some tadpoles and frogs, crabs. Keenan, yes. Thanks for your question. Yeah, they do. They do identify other birds' alarm calls. They also understand when they are rotated. So you can have a lot of birds that, if there is an alarm call, they actually move into the area and assist with alarm calling as well. And it's very well, or a very good example is when you have birds that have spotted a snake or some kind of predator inside a tree, and they all start making a racket, but it can just be started by one species, and they can start to make noises such as psh, 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 psh. But they make an aggressive call, and very often the small little birds start it, and then you have a lot of birds arriving to assist in the mob, whatever predator it is, as a sort of community, because serve the interests of all the nesting birds within trees to get rid of predators that would be around, because then it lessens the risk of them getting their nests raided as well. So very often when you have a monitor lizard in a tree, or snakes, or bird, etc., you can very often hear that kind of psh, 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 an aggressive from all the little birds, and then you'll see a lot of them flock into that tree itself and come to assist. So it is that the birds do understand each other's alarm callings, and they do react to it as well. Sometimes flying away, but other times also coming to assist in getting rid of the potential threat. If you are a good bird mimicker, you can actually sometimes even call some birds in by doing. Now, we don't promote that because we don't like changing the behavior of the birds unnecessarily, but it just does give another example that the birds do understand those kinds of calls, and they hear it and they react to it. Righty, so a little bit quiet here next to the waterhole. I'm hoping that we do get another visit from some elephants, maybe a little bit later on. Yesterday it was just before the end of the show, so maybe they'll be on time again today. But it seems like Lauren's elephants are right on time.
Well, I can tell you it's not quiet here. Not only do we have a huge number of elephants, we also have a giraffe coming in. Isn't that nice? I don't think we've had a giraffe here. Maybe once, but not a common occurrence. Probably scanning, thinking, oh, this is busy. Do I want to be here? That's how hot it is today, just to give you an idea. Most of the time we come here and they don't really swim. They splish and they splash, but these ones have been swimming. And I know I've come here every day, but it is just so special. You really don't get to see this every day. Definitely in Juma you don't. And it's just such a fantastic, productive dam. Every day is the same, but different, if that makes sense. Oh, we're gonna go for a drink. Looks so challenging. Is that a big challenge for you, boy? That was only a quick sip as well. Yes, Lisa, I have. You mustn't have been watching earlier. I mentioned the sighting I had with those two lionesses that took a warthog. It was an incredible sighting, and moments later, they just left the warthog and took an impala. It was unbelievable to watch. It was incredible. And on my personal time, not with Wild Earth, I occasionally come here and stay at a lodge called Tree Frog, and we've seen wild dogs. Wild dogs kill here. And what is so wonderful about that is that brown hyenas follow them, not the spotties. So yes, absolutely, especially in winter. More so in winter, do the predators rely on the water holes. Becomes a little bit trickier to hunt, a little bit trickier to stay under cover. And all the animals are here after all. I just want to just put my face in the mud now. They make it look so fun. I think humans should do that more often. Face planting mud. Gail, you think elephant calves are the cutest? They are unbelievably sweet. So lovely to watch. I think any baby animal melts your heart, but elephant calves are definitely up there. is busy in all corners of the dam, not just the fresh drinking water spot. Great grey bodies everywhere. Look at that one. Ah. Is it drinking like that? It is. I just saw it pull up water and bring it to its mouth like that. I think that is the unbelievable example of being lazy. Lie on your side and don't even bother to stand up. Isn't this lovely? Sitting watching all the animals quench their thirst. It's making me thirsty. Randy, you're saying Clodagh makes your days. I'm very glad to hear that. I don't think I'll be back. Got about 5 days left of this stint, and I'm not sure I'll be back to Clodagh just because we are moving. But I am more than sure we'll see it again. It's quite nicely positioned in the northwest. So it's just a little bit of a journey if you are in the east. It's possible. But let's just make the most of this one, Randy, just for you. Imagine if humans behaved like elephants, where you could just get muddy and you don't even have to clean it off. You can just go about the rest of your day like that. Feels so good, smells so good, and that's you, covered in mud. They just got spooked by a wildebeest. Nothing serious. The kudus don't hang around for long. I think they just sort of have forgotten that there's a vehicle here. Not in a sort of lack of intelligence way, just in a, we're very quiet. I'm staying very quiet. The engine hasn't been turned on in a long time. We're positioned nicely in the shade. So I think the animals just get used to your presence. But if I just arrived now, obviously the engine would be on and the kudu would just run. But that was a wildebeest, not a lion. What's up, Giraffe? Do you want to have another drink? It's amazing to think all these animals are so familiar with each other, seeing each other every day at the waterhole. Giraffe knows exactly what an elephant is, and an elephant knows exactly what a giraffe is. Starbuck, I think it's probably fairly obvious, but for protection. Not sure it's very safe for a baby elephant just to go wandering and do its own thing. The mothers are very much protectors, at least for those first 2 years. Once they get above 2, they do start to be a little bit more rowdy in a sense that they want independence from mom, or a little bit more independence from mom, but they're very small, they're fragile, can't operate their trunk very well. And mom's your protector. She's huge. She's fierce. And it's also the moms don't go too far from the calves. It's a double-way street. The baby doesn't want to leave mom, but mom also doesn't. Stay close, stay close, stay close. And that they do. Another tiny little baby if you go further over, Rian. Yeah. Wonderful, see floppy ear. I would just love that on our last mission, second last day of Escape to Nature. Wouldn't it be so lovely to see her? Or him, I actually don't know. But they always arrive. Well, that heron is actually a black-headed heron and not a grey-headed heron. Very nice. Mom is always watching Starbuck. Mom is never not aware where her calf is. Mom never gets too distracted that she turns around and thinks, where's my calf? Where's my baby? Never. Always aware. I think a big part of the essence of being an elephant is motherhood. And long gestation periods, long lactation periods. It's a huge maternal investment from the mother and all the other females in the herd. Everyone contributes, including the matriarch. It's a big investment for reproduction. It's not a quick birth and a quick sort of weaning period and off you go. Not at all. It's a huge investment. I believe every female elephant is sort of grown and shaped by the older females, especially the matriarch, into becoming a mother. Oof, big bull coming in. They may get it wrong sometimes, they may make mistakes, but I think an elephant is shaped. A female elephant. And it's all about becoming a mother. Look at the size difference from that youngster and that big boy. I think he's dribbling. I think if you look at his back left leg, he's dribbling. He's very wet there, which, although he's far away, I think he's in must. So if he's in must, then he's probably... Look at that size difference. Yeah, he's got a swagger. He's confident. I think he's in must. Jackie, darling. You're so welcome. Clodagh has been very special. I think Cedric used to spend a fair bit of time here too. Madikwe and Amakala will continue to feature on the sunrise and sunset. But as I mentioned, we're just going to be based in the east again. But we move around, so who knows? I think what's lovely at Clodagh is the number of elephants you can see. Yesterday? Yes. I think it was yesterday. The number was really high. I think it was the most Rian and I have seen. And they spend a lot of time here. Sometimes in Juma, I notice the elephants come, they splish, they splash, and then they leave. But here at Clodagh, they really spend a lot of time here. There's a lot of socializing and a lot of just hanging out. I think that's what's so special about it, all the birds around. And then, of course, you get all the other animals, the giraffe, the zebra, the kudu, the wildebeest, the buffalo. Everyone else that comes down to drink. The baboons. And then, of course, the backdrop. Need I say more? It's a nice size comparison there of the big bull and the giraffe. not bothered by each other. Coexisting, cohabiting the same space. Coexistence is a huge topic in the natural world right now. There's lots of campaigns, especially by WWF, on coexistence. How do we and the way we live nowadays coexist with nature in harmony? We are infiltrating natural spaces. We can't come into a natural space and start killing things and start being detrimental and no. This is a natural space that we are invited into. So if we're going to step into that space, how do we coexist with all the organisms here? From the venomous spiders to the venomous snakes, to the scorpions, to the elephants, to the buffalo, to the lions. This is their space. And this is just one example. There are so many examples, like the ocean and other natural parts of the world, the rainforest. If humans are going to be present, if we're going to infiltrate and we're going to sort of expand into wild species, then there needs to be coexistence. Human-wildlife conflict is such a huge problem right across Africa and beyond. Not just Africa, I'll only talk about Africa. But what do we do about that? The wildebeest are having their say. Because humans are not going to go away, and neither are the animals unless we kill them all. We need to reach a point where we're coexisting. The animals don't want to harm us, and we don't want to harm them. And I always use the example of the Ethiopian wolf because it's an unusual example in that humans haven't set out, the local Ethiopians haven't set out to hurt the wolf. They don't hunt it. They don't want its bones or its skin or its teeth or its horn. Well, they obviously don't have horns, but you know what I mean. They don't want anything from the wolf. They don't eat it. But by the population expanding, Ethiopia has one of the most rapid expanding populations in Africa. I think it's the second. And it's unsustainable. And yet, there's not many places for people to go. So people and local communities and villages are moving up the mountain. Now, the mountain belongs to the wolves. But because humans are encroaching and moving up the mountain, is pushing the wolves up the mountain. So the wolves are now very sort of stuck, if you like, at the top. They're now 4,000 meters up, and their habitat is restricted and fragmented. But the humans are not intentionally trying to do that. Ethiopians are the most wonderful people. They just need space. They need to live. They need to make a living. So they're just moving up the mountain because it's livable and there's work and it's beautiful. But the wolves also need it too. And there are many offshoots to this problem in that humans bring dogs. They bring pet dogs. And unfortunately, pet dogs cannot mate with wild dogs, but they can mate with the Ethiopian wolf, and that's very problematic. You actually, when you go there, you can actually see some dogs that look like a stray dog, but you think, you also look like a wolf. Ah, okay, now I see what's happening. And that within itself is threatening the genetic integrity of the Ethiopian wolf population, which only sits at 500. The wolves have now, due to the restricted habitat, become so specialized in their hunting. They're so specialized in that they only really hunt the giant mole rats. So now they're sort of locked at the top of the Bali Mountains and the Simeon Mountains, and it's a really difficult situation because what's going to need to happen there is coexistence. There's a wonderful organization called the Ethiopian Wolf Conservation Program, and they're working so hard up there, and it's 4,000 meters up. Trust me, I know. It's cold, it's windy, you feel the altitude. And they're actually trying to vaccinate all the wolves against rabies, canine distemper, all of these potential diseases that the pet dogs can bring in order to save the Ethiopian wolf population, because 500 is not a lot of animals. Once that 500 goes, there is no more wolves, or there are no more wolves. They are gone. and they can never come back. But the diseases have come from the humans bringing their dog, and it's such a difficult situation, but the answer lies in coexistence, and it needs to be understood how humans can coexist with animals better. Even in the Maldives, in this very uniquely structured country that's more home to me than Scotland is, tiny little islands, no fresh running water, no access to electricity grids, very low-lying islands, and they're obviously worried that the Maldives is going to be the first country to go under. They've got to coexist with the oceanic animals. They've eaten turtle for years. It's just a massive part of Maldivian culture. Yes, to us it sounds a bit, but that's their culture. They've done it for centuries. But now the turtle species are becoming endangered, and they're listed as endangered, and there are laws and legalities around eating turtle. But what about these people? These people also need to survive. And it's a very, very difficult topic across the board, no matter whether you're talking about Ethiopia or South Africa or Maldives. Humans need to coexist. Only then can we start to reduce the amount of human-wildlife conflict. And I believe it happens a lot. It's covered up a lot. Some incidents went viral and were really famous, but most incidents don't. But they still happen. And it's not always a case that the animal really wants to hurt the human or the human wants to hurt the animal, but it creates a situation that's just not in harmony. How do we do that? I definitely don't have the answers. It's a huge topic, but we need to start thinking that's this way. We can't just come in and kill everything inside. This is not our land. It's theirs. It's his. It's the elephant's.
We hope that when you watch Wild Earth, you will fall in love with nature. We know that our explorers share a passion for nature and want to make a difference. Wild Earth Schools is back. Sign up to be an explorer, and your subscription will help us reach the future conservationists of our planet. Invest in something that truly matters, encouraging children to care for our beautiful wild Earth. Wild Earth Explorers, make a difference.
sorry, when I was just having a drink, it's very hot. Clo Dam, you have been amazing. My favorite dam and will continue to be so. But talking of dams, let's see what's happening at Okokoyo.
Indeed, thanks, Lauren. Yeah, where there is the continuous movement of animals here, as per usual. And it's getting more and more. Lots of wildebeest now pulling in with the springbok that are also there. But just been sitting thinking of any of the other special things that I know about Namibia. And you know Namibia and have been there. You may have been in the area between Swakopmund and Henties Bay. Now, if you take that road along the coast, there is a portion of it, if you look on your right-hand side, which is inland to your left or to the west, is looking out onto the ocean. But if you look on your right-hand side at a moment, I think it's just past mile 6 or so, you start to see the gravel plains turning a very strange hue of orange. And in that particular spot, there is the largest terrestrial lichen fields in the world. And it's absolutely incredible. And the bizarre fact that a lichen is formed by a symbiotic association of a fungus and a species of algae has led some authorities to refer to this curious plant as a, wait for it, 1 + 1 = 1 organism. And thousands of lichens occur across and throughout the fog belt of the Namib biome in the hot, exposed places where few other plants survive. They're true fog plants, sustaining themselves exclusively on fog and dew coming in from the ocean. Yet they have no roots, stems, or leaves that could serve to trap water. The fungus is the dominant partner and benefits nutritionally from the entrapped algae, which perform the function of photosynthesis. As we know, it provides the thallus, the main structure of the lichen, which not only houses the algae, but also attaches the lichen to stones, rocks, or vegetation structures. The thallus has various designs depending on the lichen. The orange lichen, which I'm speaking about, the Teloschistes capensis, for example, forms a cushion-like clumps on the soil and found from that region just after Swakopmund, right up almost to and past Cape Cross, where there's another one, Santosonia herorensis, is branch-like and it grows on stones east of Walvis Bay. Some lichens, such as Caloplaca indurata and Xanthopalmalia species, encrust rocks and quartz pebbles, creating delicate lacy patterns, while others, the vagrant lichens, are leaf-like and unattached. And these are incredible because they are literally nomadic. And German-speaking Namibians refer to this latter type more romantically as Wanderflechten, or wandering lichens, for they are blown back and forth across the desert by the prevailing winds. And the best-known Wanderflechten are Xanthoma sulina convoluta and Palmalia huiena, which collect often in dense masts in washes and in roadside ditches. It's incredible, as I continue to always say, how special the deserts are of Southern Africa, and in particular in Namibia, because it just creates an immense amount of biodiversity. And it's crazy because the animals and the plants and the likes are also specifically adapted to that particular environment, so much so that you find them nowhere else in the world. And that's why we always refer back to the living deserts as opposed to this inhospitable, barren environment. And here in Etosha, we're still inside the desert itself, and you can just see the life that is in this park, this very special park in the northern central part of the country. So, and just something else that I need to mention is about the Quizmania Marathon, and that's in aid of Earth Month. And it's for the first 2 hours of the Sunset Safari, which is on Saturday and Sunday. And the semi-final is today, which is Saturday the 29th, and the final will be tomorrow on Sunday the 30th. So jump on the website to find out more. That will be coming on later this afternoon. Now, as we were also, and still are, with a long weekend that is going on in South Africa, celebrating Freedom Day as the celebration of our first democratic election of the 27th of April, 1994. And it was also the same day that we released our new South African flag. So a very important date in the history of South Africa, and something that we need to all celebrate. And with that, I'd like to tell everybody that doesn't know about the spirit of Ubuntu. And I think it's important because we've been speaking about lots of different species and wildlife, etc., and human-wildlife conflict, etc. But I think it's important for humans to first love humans before they can love anything else. As the saying goes, you need to love yourself before you can love anybody else. I think we need to sort out our problems before we'll be able to sort out any wild or wilderness area problems. And I think the spirit of Ubuntu encompasses that. And it's a collection of values and practices that people of Africa or of Africa origin view as making people authentic human beings. While the nuances of these values and practices vary across different ethnic groups, they all point to one thing. An authentic individual human being is part of a larger and more significant relational, communal, societal, environmental, and spiritual world. A person is a person through other people, and it strikes an affirmation of one's humanity through recognition of an other in his or her uniqueness and difference. It is a demand for a creative intersubjective formation in which the other becomes a mirror, but only a mirror, for my subjectivity. This idealism suggests to us that humanity is not embedded in my person solely as an individual. My humanity is co-substantively bestowed upon the other and me. Humanity is a quality we owe to each other. We create each other and need to sustain this otherness creation. And if we belong to each other, we participate in nations. We are because you are, and since you are, definitely I am. The I am is not a rigid subject, but a dynamic self-constitution dependent on this otherness creation of relation and distance. So, the spirit of Ubuntu, I am because you are. So be the 1 + 1 = 1 organism, and I think that's when we're really going to be able to help wildlife, especially with conflict, as we have so much already between humans. Sort that out, and then we can sort out the wilderness, I think. So that's my message for today, the spirit of Ubuntu, and the 1 + 1 = 1 organism, like the lichen. The animals still coming in drips and drabs. Some blue wildebeest there now, at least, in their group on that side that they prefer. That's seemingly their spot that they like to drink. Lorraine, absolutely. I think if we could spread the spirit of far and wide, I think it'll make a very big difference in the world. And starting with us as humans, as the dominant apex predator on the planet, I think we sort ourselves out and we'll be able to sort everything out very easily. A couple of youngsters in the mix here. And the oryx going into his, and I say his, I mean as that as a collective, the oryx's favorite spot, right in the yeah, as that oryx ran off, you Springbok now are watching it, trying to work out what's the problem. Can't be too serious. The head's going back down. It's thinning out a bit now. Oh, there's another black-faced impala. And you see on their preferred side as well. Definitely all creatures of habit. The impala liking that side, the springbok liking this side to us, the oryx like to go in the middle, and the wildebeest like more so on the right-hand side. And continuous croaky calls from the springbok. Well, it's also taking advantage of the shade. Just off there on the left. So when you see these impala now in the full sun, you can actually notice quite clearly now how much darker they are than the common impala. Especially if you look at this lovely ram that was making his way towards us, now turned back. And those beautiful black facial markings as well. See it on the youngsters here that are walking towards us too. As impala go, I think these guys are spectacular. And you can see clearly now why they are called black-faced impala. But similar to in the Lowveld, where the common impala do occur, as well as in the northwest and all around in the wilderness parks. Same here in Etosha. The black-faced impala is the preferred food of leopards. They will also take down other prey, but they're generally moving in a similar and same habitat. So the likelihood of them taking down impala, other than other species, is very high. So the majority of their food is impala. I've never seen leopard on this side of the park. It's not to say that they won't ever or haven't ever been here. It's just in all the years I've had no recollection of any sightings on this side of the reserve of leopard. And seemingly once you get from the sort of Olifantsbad waterhole, which is to the east of here and heading towards Halali, from there on towards Halali and then on to Namutani as well. That's where the prevalence of leopards is much higher. And there's a lot more thickets, and there can be some rocky outcrops, etc., and they really frequent in those parts. So it also coincides with the populations of baboons as well. So impala, baboons, leopards, seemingly very similar habitats. And so you're in the same parts of the reserve. There's small pockets of impala here, and I would imagine there is chance for there being some left to the south, Kuyu, towards the Ombika waterhole, where we also get that big pride of lions. But as I say, there can't be too many because I've never heard any sightings of them in this part. But I'm sure there are the odd two. I love watching Springboks too, not only out here in the bush, but also on the rugby field. And they will be defending their world champion trophy coming up in September. So we'll be watching them with interest. And if you ever go to Namibia, you'll also realize very similar in culture to South Africa. People there also like a braai, they like beer, they like biltong, and they like the bokke, which is our name for the Springboks. Algae, yeah, it's very diverse. Yeah, and as I say, it's diverse waterhole to waterhole as well. And on this particular side of the reserve, unfortunately, we haven't been able to see any of the predators. You'd have to watch this waterhole overnight, but it does get very well visited by predators too, mainly lions and hyena, spotted hyena. But the other waterholes, jeepers. You've got leopards, brown hyenas, honey badgers, art of bat-eared foxes, lots and lots of surrogates. So an excellent place to view them. Lots of cheetah. And just with the landscape, it is extremely unique, and it's just fantastic. I love this spot, and I go to Etosha as frequently as possible. So slowly heading towards the end of the show. Once again, we've always got to say thanks to everybody behind the scenes that make the show possible, especially the wildlife, and for the wonderful pictures that they've been able to let us show you. And thanks to the naturalists and the cam ops as well, out there doing their thing. But also thanks to you for watching, folks. It's been a lovely escape to nature once again. Don't forget that there will be the sunset safari a little bit later on from 2:30, and then of course the sunrise safari tomorrow morning. And then we'll have our last escape to nature for the time being tomorrow afternoon. So I will be here waiting to see you all again. And don't forget the spirit of Ubuntu. My name is Ralph Kirsten. Be the 1 + 1 = 1. Ciao.